Bacchanal, 6:13 in Trinidad and Tobago. So let's get a perspective from the head of the Tobago Business Chamber on the quite public dispute between the leader and the founder of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, Watson Duke, and Chief Secretary Farley Augustine. It all bubbled up last week with the video initially from Mr. Duke, then came the response, then came the action taken to suspend, to remove Farley and a couple others from the executive positions of the PDP, then talk about a no confidence motion, then the response from Farley yesterday talking to Tony and Dale on I-95.5, challenging Mr. Duke to go ahead with it. Okay, so Martin George, attorney at law and head of the Tobago Business Chamber, I see the broad smile on your face already because I mean, we can't make light of it, but it's about governance in Tobago, isn't it? Good morning to you.
Yes, indeed. Good morning to you and good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. And, that's the concern that we as a business chamber have, because any such turmoil and, this type of brouhaha that has occurred is not good for the stability and the sense of direction that you want to see Tobago going in. We are now coming out of the pandemic. We are now trying to recover. We've seen lots of activity, economic activity on the island, with persons visiting, persons wanting to come to invest, persons, wanting to come for carnival, So therefore, it's really the last thing that Tobago and Tobagonians need right now. And despite, my personal attempts to reach out to both goodly gentlemen to, try to, see if I could broker some peace or truce between them, it appears that instead they have opted to escalate and ratchet up the tensions and the throwing of barbs across at each other, and some of their supporters have even joined in, so that has made it even worse because you have people now basically pitching sides, in terms of how they view this.
And in relation to that, before we talk a bit more about it, you talked about your attempts at intervention. Were you actually able to speak to them directly about resolving this as quickly as possible at all? Were you able to speak to them?
No, I did not, because I would prefer any such discussion to be in the presence of them both. And that has not come about.
Okay. And it could be argued, though, Mr. George, well, this is just political games being played. There's the business of the people of Tobago to be attended to. How will this actually get in the way? Because listening to Chief Secretary Farley Augustine, he was saying, look, the work for the people of Tobago, there's the countdown to Carnival at the end of October and so on. That is still ongoing. There was the grand opening over the weekend. So it's entertaining, it's amusing, it might create a lot of emotion. But how is it actually getting in the way of the business of Tobago?
Well, the fact of the matter is, Fizzy, once you have any political turmoil in any situation, it always has a spin-off effect and a ripple effect for business. That's something that's unavoidable, and it's a consequence of any political instability. You look around the world and you recognize that, look, even in terms of investments, in terms of, persons deciding, well, okay, look, we're going to move our business to this country, or you always look for the political stability of the country, because you don't want to end up in a scenario where basically, like in some countries, every Monday morning is a coup and you have a new leader. And where the far-reaching consequences of this are that, look, these are gentlemen who have been speaking about autonomy for Tobago and self-governance. So you ask yourself, well, okay, if you give them greater autonomy, greater powers of self-governance, what then is going to happen? Are we really going to end up in a scenario where, you're having a bloodless coup every Monday morning and a new leader is, imposing himself and saying, well, look, I am now, the king of the hill in charge for the day, So it does not augur well for the stability of Tobago, and as I say, from the political perspective and the business perspective, this is never a good thing or a good sign.
I hear that point, but you drew reference to a lot of those countries where, as you said correctly, there seems to be a coup or some sort of unrest every Monday morning or even Friday night before Monday morning. But there are other countries where it seems that you have an election where it's too close to call and there's no government for about 6 months. We see something happening in Sweden right now where they had an election on Sunday. They haven't announced the results as yet. You don't hear anything about any unrest. You hear about coalitions that they're taking 6 months to form in Holland or wherever else. And governance continues. You never hear about any unrest.
You have Guyana's elections, which took almost a year to declare the results.
Precisely. So can it be argued, even while these games continue, and it seems, as you said correctly, it's going to be ratcheted up with Farley basically daring Watson to come now with a motion of confidence and see really who in charge of the Tobago House of Assembly, can the argument not be put forward that if the THA is really a responsible organization, whoever is at the helm, that they will ensure that the business of Tobago continues uninterrupted?
Well, I think it was more than just a symbolic gesture, but I think that the Chief Secretary made it a point to show over the weekend that he was trying to continue with the business of Tobago when he held a meeting with the residents in the Crown Point area. And it was well publicized. I think he had it up on his Facebook page, etc., to show that the assembly was still working and that they were still doing things for Tobago and, I guess, seeing after the business of Tobago. But you see, the reality is, Fazil, we know that these are things that, will be affected by what is going on in the background, because at the end of the day, you have the assemblymen, the elected persons, who also hold portfolios. So in other words, if it is that you have, say, for instance, a secretary who is responsible for a certain division, and you as chief secretary, you need to get certain things done. If that person is now looking to pitch camp in the other side, then of course that is going to stymie things. They may not wish to comply with your request. In fact, Mr. Duke himself has said that he has made requests and they have not complied with it. And he's deputy chief secretary. So the fact of the matter is, notwithstanding the public relations effect of showing that you are trying to continue with the business of the assembly, things must be affected because persons are beginning to take sides and harden position one way or the other. And of course, then you're going to see obstructionist behavior or recalcitrant or, persons who are not willing to do what they ought to do in terms of their duty because they are now looking at their allegiances one way or the other.
I wonder if we'll get a Tobago version of a recalcitrant minority. You never know. It might make for an amusing discussion. But given the fact that it appears, at least at this time, and notwithstanding your own efforts, in fact, by the evidence of your own efforts, there seems to be no willingness for these two individuals to come together and sort it out. What would you like to see happen? Would you like to see Watson lay the motion of no confidence, win or lose, and then move on? What would you like to see happen if they're not prepared to come together and reach some sort of settlement?
Well, I think they ought to sit down and really lower the temperature for Zim. That is what is necessary. They need to bring it down a notch. And they need to recognize that, look, first of all, you're dealing with two very different personalities here. And even though we may think differently in terms of certain things, we may have different views or different approaches, you ought to be able to recognize that, look, you may bring certain strengths to the table, I may bring certain strengths to the table, but yet when Fazil and Martin have a discussion like this, there's a synergy that we create that is now bigger and better than your ideas alone or my ideas alone, and we're able to work it that way. I am hoping that they can see that in each other and recognize that for the good of the people of Tobago, they ought to take that approach. I've not seen any evidence of that yet, but you asked me what I hope for, that's what I'm hoping for.
Do you see any, as I say, you kind of preface my next question. Do you see any evidence of that? Because maybe you really need to take a sip of water before you answer the
Well,
next.
Patrice said it, drink water and mind your business.
Exactly. So, but the thing is that, I mean, given the personalities, I mean, we know what Watson Duke is. I mean, since he became very much at the forefront of the trade union movement, the WASA section of the PSA so many years ago, took over the leadership of the PSA. We've seen all the toing and froing in relation to that. Have you ever seen Watson Duke take a backward step?
Never, never. The thing is, you see, I mean, Watson is a street fighter. We know that, He's the type who will get down and dirty and wrestle in the mud with you. And Farley, I think, would be the one who would try to preach from the pulpit at you. But the fact of the matter is, with them hardening their positions, it is going to end in a conflict one way or the other. So, I mean, I am not sure why they are choosing this route, and I'm still hoping that reason and good sense will prevail for the good of not just Tobago, but for the good of Trinidad and Tobago, because we don't need this type of instability or turmoil, brewing within the bosom and belly of the Tobago House of Assembly, because that's where it is now. It's no longer a party issue in a physique. It has graduated beyond that. This is now a THA issue.
I hear you on that, and in the time that we have available, because I know you have another commitment this morning, and we thank you very much for making yourself available to chat with us. As you said correctly, broadening the discussion, why does it seem that every attempt, Martin George, outside of PNM, UNC type politics, ends up in some kind of bacchanal very, very quickly? NAR...
Go back to NAR, that's exactly what I was going to cite. Yeah.
Exactly. NAR 33-3, within a year, they're falling apart. People's Partnership, within a year, MSJ said they were betrayed. COP, yes. Look what happened. Now we have PDP in Tobago, 14-1, less than a year ago, and look what happened now. Yes. Is it that any other attempt outside of basic African Indian politics is doomed to fail?
Well, the thing about the PDP scenario is even worse. Because this is internecine warfare. This is not, an amalgamation of parties that came together in a hasty marriage, and you're trying to make political love, to consummate the marriage. This is within the belly and bosom of the party itself. That's what makes this one worse. So it appears that there are fractures that have been opened up, and they appear to run deep. So, you ask yourself, will there ever be that closure or that healing to bring about some kind of unity going forward?
And I'm sure you would have heard this, if you probably didn't entertain this yourself. When you look at the divergence in the personalities of Watson Duke and Farley Augustine, the view is, and this is not just from the PNM lunatics, the view is that this was bound to happen.
Well, I like to look at history. And if you look at the history of Mr. Duke in some of the organizations he's been in, you look at his history with the PSA, it's been marred by conflict and strife internally. There have been, several attempts, to unseat him. You have persons filing court actions and, that kind of thing. So it appears that, he has come out of that type of struggle and that type of, acrimonious atmosphere. And it appears that that still persists. But if you look also at all the trade union leaders who have ended up in politics in Trinidad and Tobago, it appears that no matter how much you try to bring them into the national parliament to say, well, okay, look, you're in a different role now, you're in the role of either governance or opposition, and you are sitting in the highest body, lawmaking body in the land, it appears that you can't take the trade unionism out of them. And you look at the history and you recognize that that's exactly what has happened. All of those who have come from the trade union movement, they still have that, I guess, fire. and that longing for conflict and confrontation within them.
That sounds like an elitist view, Mr. George. It's almost like saying that if you're in a trade union movement, you're at the lower level, you're with the rank and file.
Not at all, not at
When
all.
you come into power,
That's why I said historically, if you look at it and you look at how they have functioned, you know, we have persons who have come from the trade union movement. I mean, Mr. Pandey himself was from the trade union movement. Let's not forget that. You know, then he fell out with his own trade union. He came into politics. He fell out with his political partners. Then he fell out with persons within his party. You remember the genesis of the beginning of the end was the clash between himself and his own Attorney General, Mr. Ramesh Maharaj. So, as I say, I'm speaking historically. When you look at the facts, that's what it seems to be.
okay, and before we conclude, the fact is, though, that Watson Duke, love him or hate him, was the man who created the PDP, who brought Farley Augustine into the politics and created this platform which clearly proved phenomenally successful last year. So do you just simply say, look, you founded the party, you started the party, but use too much of a rabble-rouser to be here anymore. Just go in the background. That's not going to happen?
And that's why I was a bit surprised at the fact that Mr. Augustine chose to throw down the gauntlet, so to speak, to Mr. Duke, because you see, even though you may, I mean, I guess maybe Farley did a head count and found that he had the numbers on his side within the body of the assembly. But if within the body of the party, you don't have that support, ultimately, I think you are always going to have a difficult time, because the party can make life very difficult for you if it is that you are basically a pariah and an outcast, but yet still you are wearing the crown. Look at Mr. Kelvin Charles. Look what happened to him. Look how he was hounded out of the office of Chief Secretary when he no longer commanded the support of the majority of his party.
Indeed. Look what happened to Tracy Davis' lesson right after that as well. When we talk about but in any event, the PNM is saying, well, at least only ain't taking we on right now, given what is going on with the PDP. Martin George, we thank you very much indeed for taking the time to be with us this morning.
Always a pleasure.
Take care.
Great morning.
Thank you very much once again. 6:30 in Trinidad and Tobago. Speaking of union leaders, I don't know if Leo Ramkissoon has aspirations towards the politics, but we're going to be getting his perspective in the ongoing wage negotiations, or maybe the not going wage negotiations that seem to be in abeyance right now. But as we head to the break, let's have an image for you. It's a painting done by a young lady by the name of Chelsea Leah. A very nice image, very interesting way that it's presented. A road to where? It's not a yellow brick road, but it's a blue road heading towards the blue sky and the clouds and so on. Very, very nice. Is that a river or is it a road? I wonder. I'm seeing some boulders at the side. Might be a river. It could be. Well, a river to where, boy? Okay, well, we'll probably have to find out from Miss Leah at another time. We'll be right back.